Okay, so this is the second constructive response question that I have been sharing with my students and requesting them to send me their constructive response answers so that I can provide my feedback. So this is a feedback thing. I want it to be short, because of which I will not be teaching. I'll be just taking you through it, and then in the description you can find this question, the answer, our ideal answer and everything, from which you can understand more. And I will also share answers written by certain students, and you will once again understand why the results are not so good in CFA level 3. And I'm astonished. In fact, the fourth part of this question was the simplest of the calculation, and almost everyone has done it wrong. And that was simplest calculation. There was no complication at all. But I'm really shocked as to what is the state of affairs. I think there is an urgent requirement of bringing focus and practicing with conviction and practicing more and more. Anyways, let me take you through this question. So we have a particular fixed income portfolio manager, and this particular manager wants to immunize a single 10-year liability of USD 120 million. The present value of the liability is 92,221,521. That's the PVL. So it's a 10-year liability. Duration is 10. Macro is duration. If somebody wants to know the convexity, you must be knowing it's T into T plus 1 divided by 2. It's T into T plus 1, which is 10 into 11. 110 is the convexity, and duration is 10. Zerbe decides not to use zero coupon bonds to immunize the liability and considers 3 possible immunizing portfolios using non-callable fixed rate US Treasury bonds. Zerbe prepares a comparative analysis of 3 bonds given in Exhibit 1. Zerbe explains to Uskwaka that once chosen, the immunizing portfolio will need to be rebalanced over time. We are aware of that, because you know that there is something called duration wandering. As time passes, the duration of the asset does not remain equal to duration of liability, and you have to rebalance. Anyways, coming to Exhibit 1, here we have Exhibit 1. If you see and you recollect, cash flow yield is not relevant over here at all. Sabse pehla cheez. Anybody writing about cash flow yield is going to unnecessarily waste his time. Cash flow yield is irrelevant over here, okay, in this particular screen. Now, the question is, determine which portfolio in Exhibit 1 would best immunize the future liability. Justify your response. Determine and justify. Determine means you have to tell portfolio A or B or C. Justify means you have to specify the reason as to why you have chosen this particular portfolio and why you have eliminated the other portfolios. If you do not explain why the other 2 portfolios are eliminated, your answer is not complete. I may repeat again. You have to, as a part of justification, give reason for eliminating the other 2 portfolios. So if you recall, the conditions for immunizing a single liability are: PV of A should be equal to PV of L. Second, duration of asset equal to duration of liability. And third, the convexity of the portfolio asset should be just greater than the convexity of liability, just greater. Okay, so that we are able to enjoy the yield changes, so that convexity of asset is just greater because we don't want high dispersion, because otherwise the portfolio will be exposed to structural risk. Anyways, you don't have to explain so much. The thing is that there are 3 conditions: PVA greater than PVL, DA equal to DL, and CA just greater than CL. Okay. Now, we once again look at the exhibit which was given. So if we look at the exhibit, we find that the exhibit shows that the present value is higher for A and C, but the present value of B is lower than PVL. The present value of B is lower than PVL, and therefore portfolio B is eliminated. Portfolio B is eliminated. Next we see that duration of portfolio A and portfolio B is close to 10, but duration of portfolio C is way lower than 10. Therefore portfolio C is eliminated. So B is gone, C is gone. The answer should be A. We look at A. A's present value of asset is more than that of liability. Its duration is equal to 10, and its convexity is there's no need to compare actually with the convexity of B and C, because B and C are anyways ruled out. Okay, so accordingly the answer is what? A. Look at my standard answer. I have written portfolio A, that's determination. I have not wasted my time by writing portfolio A is the most recommended portfolio for immunizing the liability of 10 years. No, only portfolio A. Then I have written 3 conditions for immunization. Even while writing the conditions, full language should not be written. 3 COND NS, that way. Okay, you can write short form. First condition, PV of A greater than PV of L, hence portfolio B eliminated, uska PV kam tha. Number 2, DA equal to DL equal to 10, C eliminated because uska DA 9.53 tha. Number 3, convexity of A asset should be just greater than convexity of liability. Here, convexity of liability is 110. This is not required in the answer. You may not write, I was just making you recollect. Portfolio C is eliminated because the convexity of portfolio C is less than 110. Okay, so portfolio C is eliminated. So the only portfolio that is left is portfolio A, which satisfies all the condition. So if you look at this answer, the student has written portfolio A, full marks. And the reason that the student has given seems to be correct. That for portfolio A, PV of asset greater than PV of liability. Duration matches closely. Minimizes convexity. So seems to be correct. But the problem is that when they are asking for justification, they are asking you to eliminate the other two portfolios. The student has not explained that. Why portfolio 2 is eliminated, why portfolio B is eliminated, why portfolio C is eliminated. So over here, this was a 4 marks question. The student will get 1 marks for determination, and then for the other 3 marks, definitely 1 marks will be deducted, if not 2. So the student is unnecessarily losing marks by not understanding what does the word justify mean. When you are choosing one particular asset allocation or a portfolio compared to others, you need to eliminate the others. That's a necessity. So look at the answer of this student. Portfolio A, full marks. Reasoning, PV of A and C portfolio greater than PV of liability. Correct? Therefore, B is eliminated. Macaulay duration of A is that of liability. Correct? Therefore, C is eliminated. Convexity is lower in case of A between A and B. Perfect. Super perfect answer, full marks. So the first answer, portfolio C, the student has chosen. Now this is wrong. Therefore, there's a question of justification does not arise. 0 marks over here. Let's move to question number 2. Question number B. Sorry, we have to read further. 1 year later, a duration gap exists between the liability and the immunizing portfolio. The future liability now has a present value of USD 91,732,436 and a modified duration of 8.867. The immunizing portfolio has a market value of 92,749,570 and a modified duration of 9.107. Zerbe closes this duration gap using a US Treasury note futures contract in a derivative overlay strategy. You must be knowing that to close the duration gap, we can either sell some bonds, buy some bonds, or we can use T-note or T-bond futures. They are going to use T-note futures. Based on the cheapest to deliver bond, she determines the basis point value BPV for one futures contract to be 71.32. Determine whether Zerbe should take a long or a short position in the futures contract and calculate the number of futures contract to close the duration gap. Show your calculations. Now, first of all, the show your calculations cannot come in the exam. Cannot. I have just introduced this so that I wanted the student to revise and to brainstorm. But in the exam, show your calculations won't come. Of course, you can show your calculations. Your time will be wasted. But the good thing will be that in case you have made some mistakes in the calculation and your process is correct, they may give you some partial marks. Anyways, let's discuss the answer. Over here, we calculate the BPV of the liability. So BPV of the liability can be easily calculated as the value of the liability, which is 91,732,436 multiplied by modified duration 8.867 multiplied by 0.0001. Okay, you should be knowing the formula. The value multiplied by the MD multiplied by the 0.0001. So accordingly in the answer, we get the BPV of the liability 81,339. That should be the BPV of the liability. And the BPV of the asset immunizing portfolio is 84,467. That's higher. So we are supposed to reduce the BPV. Since we are supposed to reduce the BPV, therefore we will go short. And they have not asked why should we go long short. They have asked determine whether we should go long or short. So in the answer, when you write short, you don't give a reason. There's no need to give a reason. Okay, determine whether we should go long or short. Just give it, write short. And then the number of futures contract, since they are asking us to show the calculation, so liability BPV minus immunizing portfolio BPV divided by futures BPV. So the calculation is done over here. It's coming to minus 43.86, rounded off to minus 44. That is 44 contracts short. I have written the note that in the exam they won't ask, show your calculation. So in the exam your answer should be short 44 contracts. That's it. Okay. The answer over here for the student, Zerbe should take a short position, number of futures equal to this is super perfect. There is no problem at all. Just that the student could have shaved his or her time by not writing that statement, Zerbe should take a short position. Instead, the word short is enough. Look at the student's answer. Short the position in futures contract, full marks. Calculation shown 44 futures contract to sell, full marks. Now look at this answer. Zerbe should take a short position, the futures contract, correct, because of negative gap between the BPV of liability, BPV of asset. It was not asked. Why should they go short? It was not asked. So because of wala part, faltu ka likha hua. Then since show your calculations diya hua tha, therefore calculations has been shown. That's perfect. 44 contracts is perfect. Okay. Next, we move to the next part, the part C of the question. Oswayo also asks Zerbe for advice on how to position the domestic fixed income portion of the portfolio. Zerbe expects the US Treasury yield curve to immediately flatten. Okay, flatten. If you understand upward sloping yield curve, flatten kaise karega? The long term yield will fall and the short term yield will rise, and presents a forecast in Exhibit 2. Look, they presented a forecast also. So the 30-year yield is falling by 35 basis points, while the 2-year, 5-year yields are rising. The 10-year yield is not changing. So there is a flattening of the yield curve pinned at the 10-year point. So obviously we should be going long on the 30-year to utilize the fall in the yield. We have to focus on that. We should go long on the 30-year. That's the catch over here. Oswayo wants to position the domestic portion of the portfolio to benefit from Zerbe's yield curve forecast. Zerbe and Oswayo consider the portfolios of non-callable fixed rate US Treasury bond with 2-year, 5-year, 10-year and 30-year maturity. Selected data for the portfolio is given in the exhibit. So look at the data. We are given portfolio 1, portfolio 2, portfolio 3. If somebody applies brains, straight away you should look at 30-year, which has the highest allocation to 30-year. Portfolio 2, 37.55%. Portfolio 3 has a lower allocation, 24%. Portfolio 2 has the highest allocation. So portfolio 2 will benefit the most. Okay, further to your knowledge, you can see that portfolio 1 is a bullet portfolio. It's unnecessarily putting 100% in 10-year. The yield is not going to change. So it's not going to benefit from the active forecast of the flattening of the yield curve. If you look at portfolio 3, that's a ladder portfolio. The ladder portfolio is unnecessarily going 26.1% in the 5-year bond, which will suffer the duration pressure. You can argue, sir, even the 2-year, we are unnecessarily putting 26%, but 2-year hardly has a duration. So portfolio 2 is the best. Okay. You don't have to focus on 62.45% in the 2-year yield. Why? Because 2-year yield has a very low duration. Don't have to worry. 30-year yield has a high duration. So we have to go for portfolio 2. Okay, look at the reasoning that, and you can see in the last column, the duration of all the 3 portfolios is same. So for a parallel shift in the yield curve, all the 3 portfolios are going to give the same result. But here we have a non-parallel shift, a flattening. So look at the answer which I have drafted. Firstly, I have written portfolio 2. I have not wasted my sentence by writing portfolio 2 is the best and all that stuff. Then I have written what is the forecast. The forecast is the yield curve is going to flatten, pinned at the 10-year yield. What is the impact of the forecast? It is most advantageous to portfolio 2, which is barbell, least to portfolio 1, with portfolio 3 ladder in the middle. Explanation. The only yield that falls, thereby creating a price increase, is that of the 30-year bond. Portfolio 2 benefits most from the drop in the 30-year yield, while portfolio 3 benefits less because of its small allocation to the 30-year bond, and portfolio 1 doesn't benefit at all because it doesn't hold any of the 30-year bond. Okay, of course, I told you I am not teaching. I'm just showing. So anybody feeling that, sir, बहुत fast बोल रहे हैं, I am not teaching. I'm just showing you how the answer should be written, and plus you have the answers in the description to this video. Okay, look at the answers. Spend time over there. Okay. So in part C, determination is correct, portfolio 2. The explanation is totally wrong. No partial marks would be provided. The duration of all the 3 portfolios were same. and the student is writing about increasing duration and all that. So I think it is a total case of beating around the bush where you don't understand how to write. Don't do that in the exam because it will not fetch a single marks and there will be a wastage of time. So in the third answer, the student is writing portfolio 3 is most appropriate. It's a wrong answer. Portfolio 2 is most appropriate. So the justifications don't matter at all. 0 marks. So look at the third answer for the student. Portfolio 3 is the most apt. Wrong. Portfolio 2 is the most apt. So 0 marks. No question of reading the justification. Let's go to the fourth part. Zerbe also examines the fixed income portion of Osaka's investment portfolio invested in country X. Zerbe expects the yield curve and yield spread in country X to be unchanged for the next year. For this portion of the portfolio, Osaka's hold only a mix of investment-grade corporate bonds issued in country X and denominated in country X currency. There is no currency risk. Zerbe fully hedges the currency risk for the portion of the portfolio. Therefore, there is no currency risk. Selected characteristics and expectations for the fixed income portion of the portfolio invested in country X are given in Exhibit 4. Osaka asks Zerbe to estimate the annual return for the portion of the portfolio. Annual return, expected return, वो जो framework है सारे chapters में कि expected return comprises of the current yield, the coupon by price. It comprises of the rolling return, that is the price change if the yield curve remains the same. Then the next component is the expected price change because of the expected change in yield. Okay, the benchmark yield. Then the next component is the expected price change due to the change in the spread. And then the next component is the credit, expected credit loss. Then the next component is the currency effect. Okay. You must be understanding because you must have done the topic. Okay. So if you look at the data, have a look. 4.15 is the bond coupon. And the current price is 95.55. So the current yield becomes 4.15 by 95.55. Next, if we see, we are given the expected bond price in 1 year is 96.12. So 96.12 minus 95.55 divided by 95.55. That's the rolling return. If you add the two, the current yield, the rolling return, you'll get the rolling yield. Expected credit losses is 0.12%. It's the negative. There is no currency effect. There is no yield change in the question. What's the question? Calculate the expected return for the next year on the fixed income portion of the bond. Use additive model. So accordingly, they're asking calculate. There is no need to show any calculation. Look at my answer and don't laugh at it. 4.82. क्या सर ऐसे मार्क्स मिलेगा? यस, ऐसे ही मिलेगा. क्या वो आपको दिखाने बोला है? कुछ नहीं. 4.82. बट सर अगर बाई चांस कहीं कैलकुलेशन मिस्टेक हो रहा है तो क्या मैं कंपोनेंट्स दिखा दूं? क्या एकदम दिखा दो. आप कंपोनेंट्स दिखा दो, जिससे अगर कंपोनेंट्स राइट है तो कुछ पार्शियल मार्किंग मिल सके. अंडरस्टूड? सो दैट्स हाउ इट वुड बी डन. लेट अस सी हाउ स्टूडेंट्स हैव answered this question. The answer for the fourth part D, is totally wrong. There are 3 components in this question. 4.43 is wrong. It will be 4.34. 0.596 is correct, and the third component is not written at all. There are 0 marks for that. For the fourth part, the student's answer is 4.62, whereas the correct answer is 4.82, so 0 marks. Maybe if steps are shown over here, in case it's a question where there's a space to show the steps, in that case there could be partial marking because some of the calculations may be correct, but otherwise there's 0 marks over here. Fourth part, 4.4% is wrong. The answer is 4.82%, 0 marks. I am not understanding as to how come all the students are doing wrong in this question. इस question में तो in fact yield is not changing, the spread is not changing, तो duration convexity वाला जो calculation होता है वो भी नहीं है. I had taken Victory Project का class for this particular chapter. After completing Victory Project का class, I had given a half an hour summary of this chapter. उसके बावजूद ये wrong है. तो I feel like इसका 50 question share कर देना चाहिए. Okay? कि 50 question monotonous वो कर करके level 1 के जैसे रट लेंगे and we will do this right. So this is not expected.